And we just psyched you out with that. We got something else going.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, for the next at least hour and a half, we are going to go over the 2026 budget implications, assess valuation. We'll go over GO bond and interest. And we'll also go over the strategic plan and how it plays into our draft budget. I'm going to kick it over to our finance director, and she will present. Donna will present, Rebecca will present, and I will present. We're going to tag team this tonight. So if you have any questions before we start, let me know. All right, Donna, the floor is yours.
We're going to go over the bond and interest fund first. This is the last department that you have not had the chance to visit with, and it'll be short, but it's stuff you need to know. This is, like the others, you can see our revenues coming in and our contractual services, which are our debt payments. And we are spending down our reserve because we've been saving it, for the library bond issue and coming in. So we're starting to spend that down now because this will be the first year we pay that. If you remember, the revenue that comes into the GO bonds fund, besides taxes, is our reimbursements from Harvey County, where we've done a project together and bonded them, and they pay their half of the debt service. Special assessments come in. Special assessments that we pay for others through incentive programs that we've done. The last one that's on the books is the Stand Ridge Color Corporation, and that one will run off in 2026. If someone does come in and pay their special assessments early, this is the fund that goes in, so we can put it right back on that bond. The current tax levy is 9.219 for that fund. This is just the actual principal and interest payments in case you are interested. It's a lot of numbers there, but you can see which funds pay what each year. And then we get into these big sheets, and they're small and hard to read, but I've given you great big ones. These are the folded up ones on your place, at your place setting. And this is the fund that you wanted me to project out 10 years. So we do the best we can for that. And the second half of that sheet shows all the new stuff that's coming on and the payments that will come on. The first part up here is the revenue, and these would be transfers. The new ones are transfers from waterworks. If we have new sewer projects or sales tax, that would be the new one that's coming on. The others are actual. The down here on the expenses would be the bonded interest payments. This corresponds with that chart that I showed you earlier. And then in the red is what is new. General is the only one that will be paid totally from this fund. The other sales tax, sewer, and water will be transferred in from those funds. And you can see down below the very last line there, it says the projects that they're paying for that year and how we try to skip in there if we can. But sometimes we have so much done, like when we had the library, it got to be 11 million. We needed to bond that so we didn't have to carry that debt. The next sheet, the big sheet, is the bonding project schedule. This is something that the Public Works Director, Ed, and Daniela, and we went through that to see what was most likely to happen. Of course, it changes. It might be a developer-driven that would change this, or something breaks down and we have to fix it sooner, something like that, or it can be pushed out. But you'll see the year that we're doing it is the first year up there, and then the year that it will be bonded. So this year we're bonding these 24 projects, the Fox Ridge water sewer paving, etc. And then the bond payment is what's over here. It will start coming out in 26. So you can kind of see how long it takes for these projects to progress through. And then I also put over here what the mill levy would be for that project that's coming out of the GO fund. And the red is subject to the debt limit, which water, sewer, utilities are not subject to the debt limit, as well as streets next to schools.
And remind us what that debt limit is again.
Well, right, it's 30%. And this is the ratio, and this shows you where we're at the end of '24. So we are doing well. We have 23 million left in bonding authority, and that's been down to 18 in the last few years, so it's coming back up.
Yeah.
So we're doing well.
That's a good thing.
And then the one after that is, just kind of shows you each bond that we have going right now and what percentage of that is exempted. And at the end over here, you'll see how much is falling off. Like in 2025, we have $4,365,000 worth of debt falling off. Now, I went over that real fast. Do you have any questions? It's interesting to look at all the projects that we have. And these are just kind of placeholders for several things. Some of them, it has to be done. So we still have a lot to do.
If I may add, this CIP is, let's see, we updated it to an 8-year plan. We went out 8 years.
I think we did here.
Okay. This is driven by a variety of things. Mostly this commission. Development is a priority, so we make sure that, for example, paving of a main thoroughfare, or placing utilities in an area where we didn't have plans to. That would be placed on here so that we can plan for the potential bond payment, because we're talking about large projects. Also, the comprehensive plan, which we're about to update, will drive this CIP. I hope that we have some changes to the CIP based on the outcome of that plan sometime next year. So if you have any questions about this might be a good item to talk about once we have that comp plan done, or are in the process of doing that comp plan, the comprehensive plan, excuse me. Parallel to it, to ensure that we are allocating monies for the future, or potential monies for the future, for these larger projects. For example, something that we have on our strategic plan today, which is through 2026, is to do a study for a public safety center, a fire police center. That study would drive whether or not we need that building, and then that building would need to be done in X number of years, which in turn would mean issuing bonds and preparing for a payment of X number of dollars. So if that's 5 or 7 years from now, then we would need to be ready to make a $500,000 payment 7 years from now in bond and in this fund, which is what we do several times a year. I say maybe twice a year. So it's a lot of foresight, a lot of thinking, strategizing ahead of time to ensure that we are preparing for what this commission is wanting to accomplish. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context of how there's a science, and there's also the gut feeling we should really put this in there. So it's a mix of both.
Can you remind us, or when is the last time that we studied having a new fire station? I'm assuming that's what we're talking about instead of the police station, since we just finished that remodel.
Yes.
Well, just finished. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
several years ago, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, about the fire station and as we grow, what that's gonna look like. And when's the last time we studied that?
That would have been '09.
09?
2009.
Was the last
Well, that was just a couple of years ago. I mean, why would we want to do it now?
day or two ago.
Right.
Okay, well, I'd say it's high time then.
Yes, and we have that. We actually have that in our plan to do sometime before the end of next year. I would not discount that this study could look at public safety as a whole and not just the fire department, because this is the future and not today.
I
So
understand.
perhaps 10
And
years
that
from now,
makes
we.
total sense.
Okay,
And
okay.
We should do that.
Well, we did
Absolutely.
talk about a fire station, what, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah.
I think we did.
Well, when we were talking about that 320 North Main, is that what you're referring to?
No, it was actually more north because of North Newton calls and that kind of thing. We were talking about the need. Remember that, Chief? We wondered where there might be some place in the future up
No,
in that area.
that's true. 320 North Main was about, before we did the remodel here for
Oh,
the,
yeah.
to the police
Yeah,
station.
it was
whether
320
use
North
that
Main
building
was
there.
kind of the
Yep.
beginning that
Exactly.
ended. We didn't end up there, so.
Right.
If you look at this sheet here that I have up here, the actual forecast, you can see along the bottom, it shows what the mill levy is if we stay the same. Using these projects that we have scheduled right now, we will not have to increase until 2030, depending if we really did these projects or did bigger ones or whatever. And then you can see how the ending balance kind of goes negative in 2030. But I have shown at the very bottom, if you increase the meal by a certain amount, that's what it would take to keep it where it's supposed to be, in the blue line on the bottom.
I stand corrected, that was in '06.
06?
Was the last time we did the station locations.
20 years ago.
Sorry. So, yeah.
But that's what that is down there, so you can kind of see what we're going to need in the future if we continue doing all like this is scheduled out.
And that's with what forecast on assessed valuation? Going up by,
It's something that the WSU did for us. It's on a slope and taking all the previous years and averaging it in. I use their methodology for that.
So it might not hurt to consider maybe in a couple, 2 or 3 years or so before that, some very slight increases to get prepared for that instead of,
And it depends on what we actually spend and what the valuations come in. It's all,
because you go all those years without one and then you have a 4 mil increase. Right.
followed by a 2, and then
Yeah.
another two.
another 2.
Yeah.
There's also items on here that are unknown that we know we need to do, but we're pursuing other funding opportunities. Like the signal upgrade, we're doing the SS48 grant, which is on hold right now. That could potentially fund a study that would allow us to apply for implementation money for signal upgrades. I know that's a lot of ifs, but
Right.
if
And
that doesn't pan out, we would need to upgrade signals, and signals are very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, the spike in 2030 is on the heels of the projected new station in 29 and signal upgrade in 30.
Yeah, lots of big projects. And you will see on the chart that lists the projects, if there's no bond payment associated with that, that means we're going out for a loan or something, so it will not be paid through this fund. That will be paid directly by the utility fund itself. Lots of good reading right before you go to bed.
Well, yeah, it'll be neat to feather in the new comprehensive plan, see what adjustments need to be made.
That's all what I have on that fund. Next, we'll go into the 2026 proposed budget. Rebecca?
Yes, thank you. I will start off with just a quick overview of how we've done this process and some items that staff has certainly kept in the back of our minds as we prepared the numbers for you. What you're first going to see are just some statements on organizational capacity. These are absolutely true here for our city, but they're really true for most municipalities across the country. About 90 to 95% of all of our available resources are already committed. We don't have a lot of extra give in whether capacity, whether human resources or other resources, as we've tried to continue to trim down over the years. What that means is that there's not really additional unused capacity for new demands, that without decreasing either quantity or quality of services or limiting something or delaying some work. And you've seen that in your previous budget sessions when we've kind of expanded service maintenance areas or had to make some other hard decisions during this process. One of the other items that we always keep in mind is that while we always look for those grants or other partnerships to get certain monies to start a project, that does not solve that ongoing challenge of maintaining it once we've already gotten it. So those are things that we, as staff, keep in mind continually through this process. One of the other things that has to come to mind also is that whatever our realistic expectation is, that's going to have some difficult trade-off. All of the projects are usually have high merit, and so it can be a difficult conversation. As you know, you have a new vision statement and strategic plan from the last year we did budget. So I'm just going to walk through it really quickly with you all. There's 4 main points to your vision statement: that you have a growing and thriving community, you want to embrace our heritage, actively shape our future, and have a welcoming place to call home. That's all things that, again, we keep in mind when we put the funding towards these. Next slide. Within that plan, you have 3 strategic goals. One is to sustain exceptional public service. Another one is to create that welcoming place to call home. And then your third goal is to plan and grow for the future. Under sustain exceptional public service, your 3 main points that you've directed us is to provide staffing and resources to enable quality levels of services, to maintain and improve our public infrastructure, to increase transparency and engagement to improve trust. Under your goal to create a welcoming place to call home, some of the sub-items include prioritizing quality of life amenities, investing in downtown, promoting redevelopment and revitalization in established neighborhoods and commercial areas, and then marketing Newton as a vibrant community to live, work, and play. And then in their third point, to plan and grow for the future, that includes creating and sustaining a fiscally responsible plan and policies that go throughout all of our organization, and leveraging partnerships to continue towards that community growth. We just got done just a couple months ago with going over our end of year reports. It kind of takes us a little bit. We go through all of first quarter. But just as a quick reminder, some of the things that we've gotten done as of this year, not 2024, but we've been able to update fire code. We've continued to have our weekly and bi-weekly newsletters go out. We have our new website and subsite have launched. You have funded the Main Street Facade Improvement Program for 2025. Offered your support in phase 2 of the Mennonite Housing Project, and continued implementation of all parts of the marketing plan. So these are just things to keep in mind. After you heard all of the 2024 things that we've done, here are just some highlights from 2025. Some upcoming priority projects. This is obviously not a comprehensive list, but just some things that are on the forefront of a lot of our minds is to implement the classification and benefit study at the beginning of August, to continue for succession planning, especially in key roles. We're working on our internal PCM and servant leadership models in the 3rd and 4th quarter of the year. The adoption of the fire codes, which we worked on, and the building codes, where you're having a first read later on this evening. We want to continue to sustain our training budgets and self-growth activities. As you might remember from the salary study work session you had just recently, a large percentage of our staff is very young, so that training module is very, very important. You have the Sand Creek Bike Path Extension. We've continued to look to create a targeted infill strategy that goes with some of the growth and development and planning.
continue City Desk and the other outreach efforts that are part of both the marketing plan and that continued commitment to engage the public. We're working on creating a retail recruitment plan, kicking with Harvey County EDC on their planning initiatives for the future, creating a development guide for developers, large and small, coming to our community, and then, of course, working to implement greater online access to our services, pay modules, and other items to continue to propel us into the current century. All right, this gets a little tiny on your screen, but this is a really great metric to just see those signs of new growth that is a core part of your vision. While all departments see growth, this is especially from Public Works. Public Works tends to see growth a little bit sooner than everybody else as they are centered on some of those early development activities such as building and inspections. So this gives you kind of a 5-year look back about the activity that's been created in the community. And just a couple highlights. We've seen an increase in building inspections, a percentage change of 121% since 2020. We've seen environmental inspections up 145% in that percentage change. New buildings up 270%, and the sanitation bulky item pickups have increased by 59%. So you're seeing a large growth in a lot of activity that as you continue to build those buildings, put in those roads, then you're just going to have more people utilizing them. And I'm sure by next year we'll see all departments showing, and again, more signs of growth. But this is just kind of a snippet so that you can see that activity that's been created through all those efforts in prior years. Okay. On the next slide here are a couple items that were asked for at your last work session, and they fit pretty well here. So the new improvements as of the June 2025 assessment from the appraiser's office was right around 1.2 million. And then below is a history of the abated taxes. This was a question that was asked for at one of our last work sessions. These are the economic development exemptions. So these are taxes that as they meet whatever their development plan is, will come back to the city. These are not permanent exemptions like municipal buildings or nonprofits or some other thing. So these are amounts that will eventually come back to us at the end of those agreement times.
Can you get us numbers going back further? I'd like to see back when we had development happening. This goes back to a period where development was stagnant. That wave.
Did you have a particular number in mind of how far you'd like to look back?
Ideally, I'd like to go back 20 years because that's when they would be starting to fall off and come back on the tax rolls.
Okay.
And if we hadn't abated the taxes, that's what that number is, we would have collected.
Correct.
Those amounts.
Yeah, that's just the city's portion.
Okay.
Okay. This is just kind of a quick infographic, just for everybody to remember how taxes kind of get shifted out in the residential property bill. This is just taking an example of a $100,000 house, the portion that goes to the state, the portion that goes to the school district, the county, the city. So how that whole bill comes together. Just kind of nice to see those splits.
And when I was doing this slide, it came down $20 from last year.
Don't worry, my insurance went up by more than that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's probably all I had in just that quick overview of, again, how we work to align priorities, goals, the strategic plan, and our other items into ensuring that what staff brings to you for funding aligns with that continued desire. So I'll let Donna get back into numbers.
This is the little chart you get every year that kind of shows you our history of the mill levy, and this has the 2025 on there. You can see this is the assessed valuation that we just received from the county clerk this month.
This is a 4.95%.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell them about that here. The July 1st, 2025 estimated assessed valuation is $181,170,521. We have to take the TIF valuation off of that, so it becomes to 179 million. So that means each mill equals $179,375. Last year, it was 171,243 this time. In November, we got the final valuation, and it kind of came down. So our actual mill levy last year came down to 170,901, I think it is, 905. So we lost a little bit of our valuation that we thought we were going to get. But this is an increase of almost 5%. Each mill increased by $8,470. So this is what it ended up having our rate be, 72.223 is our mills. This is a little different than what we had planned in our budget, but when the valuation went down to get the same amount of dollars in taxes, he had to raise the mill levy a little bit. If you remember this, the R&R, the revenue neutral rate is not about mills, it's about dollars. And we had like 12 million in taxes, and he had to come back up to that. So we were showing us going down 1 mill, and it didn't pan out on this because valuation went down. But we still just only accepted 11% and not the whole 12.75% like you wanted. But according to the county clerk, the revenue neutral rate mill levy is 68.82. And that's the tax rate for 2026 that would generate the same property tax revenue as levied in 2025 using the 2026 assessed valuation. So this is the difference of 3.403 mills or $610,000, which we will forgo if we stay at the revenue neutral rate. So what we are suggesting is that we keep our same mill levy and use that 610,413 increased tax revenue for 2026. So this means you'll have to do the notice to exceed the revenue neutral rate next commission meeting in July, the first one in July.
Did I not catch the amount that, the dollars that, even though we captured the 11% last year, but because the dollars came in a little less, how much was that? As opposed to now, will the 610,000 increase, but last year, how much less was it than what we had anticipated?
Each meal was about was like $300-some less.
Okay, so I'm just trying to compare the 610 to how much less we brought in last year because of that.
I don't have
Does
that
that
figure
make
right in
sense?
yeah. I can get that for you.
Okay, I'd like to know that number at
Okay.
some point.
But we really didn't lose any tax dollars because he pulled the mill up.
Yeah, no, I
So
understand.
we had captured that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So we're proposing we stay at the 72.223. Then I'm going to start going through kind of what we have in the budget so far. Our general fund, we have increases, and I know you like to receive this and see kind of what's going on. It's mainly in the wages and the benefits, like usual. And this corresponds to the increase in, if we went to the 60th percentile for the new wages. We also had to increase anytime we get more sales tax in, we have to increase the transfer that goes to EcoDevo. So I've increased that by 100,000. The equipment reserve, we are increasing that in a couple aspects. You can see the little box over on the side. A few of them went up just a little bit. to cover costs of machinery and stuff. The building maintenance is going up $150,000. What that is, the old equipment reserve was about 20-some thousand a year. And we have added in all the buildings that are not covered by anything. It's the Workington House, it's the library, it's the NRC building, it's the 3 fire stations. When something happens to those, we just have to automatically come up with the money all of a sudden. So they really need to be in an equipment reserve. And to put all that in there, it goes up by $150,000. But that is taking care of our buildings and keeping the maintenance on an even keel over the years. And then the Meridian Center, it's going to be needing some major repairs. We're coming up on 10 years? 15 years. And so we need to be increasing that equipment reserve and capital reserve.
Are there some specific items that are looming that we know of at the Meridian Center?
Yes.
There are, at this point, it's a lot of the equipment that's going to be coming up to its date, both in the kitchen and then other larger mechanical pieces. It's going to need a full paint job here pretty soon. We've been working on certain items, but they were already kind of estimated for, but the MER level had not been kept up to accommodate them. And so we're just trying to make sure that we're able to tackle those things as the building reaches 15 years. A lot of the pieces are kind of at the end of their useful life.
And what we have set back usually is 100,000. So we're just adding another 100,000 as our recommendation.
Donna, do you remember what and maybe Ed remembers the larger projects under building maintenance that led to the decision to start setting aside a little bit more monies for these projects? I know there was a couple that were pretty large in the next few years.
Yeah. Well, the rec center's coming up on the roof, which is estimated to be $500,000. There's 20 RTUs, which is the HVAC system that cools and heats that building. The controls, those were $150,000. The fire station is there. Most of these are the HVAC or roofs. Roofs. That sounds funny.
Roofs, yeah.
The roof of each one. And then the Workington House, of course, is just repairs, and we're covering a lot of that this year. This just gets it in the rotation. The training center, like we think maybe in 5 years we'll have to do some with that, with the HVAC system there. The library, in 10 years, we're going to need to update the HVAC and the boilers and pumps. So it just keeps getting money in there so we don't have to go out and bomb these projects.
And can you remind me the life, just an average, a life of some of the items that we put on there? I mean, nothing is under 10 years. Is it 10 to 20 years?
They're 20 to 30.
Okay.
Mainly.
So the cost is amortized over a period of 20 years, and then we take a portion of 150,000, which is 10,000 for this project, 5,000. And we've even considered taking a portion of that if we find that we can't do the full 150. But ideally, this is what we should do every year to keep our buildings up to date. So yeah.
City Hall needs new chillers, and it's going to, in 2030, and it's going to be $515,000 for all that. Service center needs HVAC stuff. It's going to be $215,000. They're 2030 and 2031.
Do you know when you come up with those estimates like 550,000, is that factoring in an increase of, say, 5% a year, 10% a year on what it might cost today as opposed to, 8 years from now or whatever?
I think, Ed.
We try to.
Yes,
Put
yeah,
an
we do
increase
that
in
as best we can.
Yeah, I know, it's
Yeah.
an unknown, but you have to put
Yeah.
something in there.
And we tried to pick Gary's brain before he's out of here, because he's our HVAC, expert. And got
Before he's out of here, what is that date? Do you have a date?
I think it's August.
Is it?
Yeah, August.
Okay.
You should wait till winter.
Or maybe till even next year, huh?
Try to keep them happy.
The next thing I'm going to show you is the forecasts. This forecast, all the budgets right now are including the salary, the new salaries at the 60th percentile.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
And this one here are the 5 tax-supported funds. And you can see at the very bottom in the gray bar is the funds and what each one's mill levy is at this point. So you can see our ending balance is looking better than it has in several years. They're all in positive. And this is just a snap in time, and there's no humans involved in the 4 years we're looking at. So it just increases what we think might happen. But when we get to that point, we'll for sure have a better idea of what we're going to do. But this gives you an idea of what it could be. I also did one for the general fund, and you can see the ending balance of it, and we're looking well into the future. Now, the wastewater fund is one that we need to be really watching. It has such a heavy debt load that I am requesting that we do not do a transfer. We don't want to do transfers any this year. And I think hopefully we can do it like we have been. That will really help this fund. But next year, I would not even budget for a transfer from wastewater. It needs to build up. Otherwise, if you'll see the little page in the background I've got here, that is what it would look like next year if we did the 2 transfers, which is by law, we can't do that.
You don't want to end up at
No.
548 in the hole?
No,
I don't understand.
that's against the law, so. So we think without the 2 transfers, it's going to be good. Plus, these are full of contingencies as well, in case we need to do something, so it should come in lower than this, as far as expenses go. The water fund is looking good, and these include all the transfers, so if we don't do the transfers this year, it will help this as well. And it should help get over, there's a little slump in '27, and then it starts going up again. So I think if we didn't transfer at least one of those years, we could get past that real well. Sanitation is starting to kind of go down a little bit, but you notice we have not increased sanitation rates for 3 or more years.
Yeah, at least 3.
And we've taken a hit every year on the increased landfill charges. But we've been able to just take that and go with it. So that's going to have to be looked at probably in '27 or something. Meridian Center, we are still working with that one to get that to go well. And then this is the chart that kind of shows you where our mill valuations have been. In the last 6-7 years, we've come up about $60,000 in valuation per mill. But this is keeping the same mill levy rates for each of the funds and where we'll end up as far as our percentage of expenditures. Now, this is, I think, Kathy likes this one. This kind of lets you see a look back on general fund and what we think is going to happen, and how I figured the mill increase over here, the valuation, how much taxes we're going to get, shows our increase of 4.95%, and our mills that we're using and how much ad valorem we're going to get. We always have to take out the little the delinquency of 3%. And then we usually get back taxes at least in that amount. So it was an increase of $477,945 over the year before. And this is with taking the transfers. And it looks like, and it comes out very good at the bottom. This is with the 60th percentile in wages. The next one I have is what would happen, what it looks like if we don't take the transfers. And I think we'll be able to do that. Our use of money is already coming in. It's already at close to 800,000, and it's just half the year for 2025. And hopefully sales tax will come in as good as it has last year, and we can just forego these transfers. And we'd still end up with the 16.2%. That's if we spent every nickel, which we usually do not. We try not to. So next year, by not for sure not taking the sewer or the wastewater transfer, we could end up at 11.2%. But I still think things will come in a little better, hopefully. This is worst case. So the takeaways on this is this summary includes the full increase in assessed valuation of $610,000. The salary study implementation has the largest line item increase, and the reserve funds have an increase to fully fund the necessary replacements. Now we're going to kind of get into the salary study so you can see the differences and some of the questions you've asked us on the different percentages we could go. Did you want to talk about this? You want me to continue? Salary study?
I'll kick it off.
Okay.
Alrighty, so to summarize McGrath Consultants' findings that were presented to you a week or two ago. They found that over 50% of our positions are currently within market range. And to remind you, we used 25 other regional competitors to benchmark against. The recommendation from the consultant was to position ourselves within the 60th percentile. She did offer some options for the 70th, and I know that a question by Commissioner Watson was to look at perhaps landing somewhere in the middle. We were asked how much of the unspent payroll funds remain at the end of each year due to attrition, and I think we did that for a year or two, maybe a year. 3 years. And I will let Donna get into that. We already mentioned how much new valuation, how much of the improvements we're seeing on the June assessed valuation, and how much more we would expect to see on the tax rolls as abatements roll off. I will let Donna talk about this slide.
This is the differences between the percentiles. This is just the increase. At the bottom in the pink coral colored is the total amount of payroll for each different percentile and the original. What I have shown you up here by department is the increase between each. So the first column is the increase between the original 2026 and the 60th percentile, which is what we're recommending. And then the next one is the increase between the 60th and the 65th percentile. And then the next one is, of course, the 60th and the 70th percentile. So you get kind of an idea of how much each one would cost. And then to get the whole picture, we always look at the general fund and say, well, what would this do to the general fund? But you have to remember we have other funds out there that may not be able to handle a 65 or a 70 percentile. The two that come to my mind are wastewater and Meridian Center. 60th is about all they can really handle. But this shows each of the different funds and what if they went up, what their ending balances would be if they went up either the 65th or the 70th. Just kind of gives you an idea of what it does to all the funds. The next slide is the budget to actual payroll. This is for the entire city, all funds. And you can see, although the balance at the bottom, the differences are usually close to $1 million. 22, it was 650. The big difference is in your health insurance. That's where most of the discrepancy always is. The others are pretty close. They're just people leaving, having some empty positions for a while, or someone who's been here a long time leaves, and we hire someone back at a lower rate. So that just drops that down. The insurance, I take the insurance exactly as it is. Like right now, I have what everybody's doing for 25 is what I have in the 26 budget. But they all change coming November. Everybody does a switch and scrambles around, so you never know. But you have to have a basis of starting. So that's why that is a little higher each time.
Does the insurance, is that just the amount we fund, or does it figure in the change in what our balance is and our,
That's just what we fund.
just what we fund? Okay.
I asked that question right before we walked in too, Rod.
Ah,
But you have to plan for filling with somebody that takes a family or
Right.
whatever, and then you can,
Yeah. I can't just always say, well, everybody's going to start at a single, you know?
I would like to mention something that I think is really important that Donna perhaps just calls it a part of her job, but it's very important. We just met with our insurance brokers, and with the increase in health insurance costs, the increase in the actual, the bills to us, because we are self-funded, have gone up substantially this year. We also have some high claims. We have families having babies, and that has skyrocketed our payout. Now, we do have a stop loss, but that increase is, we get an actuarial valuation from a broker, and then IMA also does one. And our reserve balance in that fund, which takes the ebbs and the flows, has been sustained to a point where our employees don't see that up and down. We have been able to keep a consistent rate because although I'm sure it has been tempting to say, oh, we just won't fund health insurance this year, or we'll decrease rates, or whatever it may be, Donna makes sure that she budgets the 5% increase for years that we may not use that entire amount, or for years that we used, like right now we're at 122% of what we budgeted for the year, and it's only July or June. Are we in June? We're in June. So kudos to Donna for that, because I know that's difficult. It's a moving target, and you don't know. It's very sick. It depends on the season. It depends what's in the water, according to our brokers. There's a lot of variables, and I wanted to give her kudos because we have a healthy plan, a healthy reserve, and that's something that's really good that our employees have told us. Please continue with that.
Do we average a couple of large work comp claims per year?
You know, we don't have a lot of work comp claims. We're very fortunate.
Yes.
We just have
For
a
as
couple
many
small ones here and
employees
there.
as we have.
We haven't really had any the last couple of years.
Very nice.
Yes,
is
don't
on
say.
your premium, is your utilization on pharmacy, or is it on traditional care that's causing your premium increase?
Both. But pharmacy has really gone up.
Yeah.
But we do get some rebates back on that. Last year,
Because you're self-insured, you're getting the rebates.
We
So
get-
are you using a PBM for that, or are you,
through Blue Cross Blue Shield,
so they're doing it?
yeah.
But they're passing the rebate through to you?
We got about $200,000 last year on rebates, which helps.
Things I thought I'd never talk about.
Keep on doing that. come off of there. Okay, one thing I did want to mention to you was the credit card fees that we've been having so much expenses on. And Lisa, who is my right hand, Assistant Finance Director, did quite a bit of work on this. And she found out that they were just increasing their fees horribly. And they can do that because it's just in there, they will increase. So
Oh, there's no cap every year that they can just do it?
they can just do it if you don't keep an eye on them.
Wow.
And so, of course, they have all these new fees too. They have an interchange fee, they have a settlement fee, they have a risk assessment fee. All these things just keep coming and coming. So she was looking at it. In '22, we had over almost 4 million in sales and about 26,000 transactions. And an average cost per sale for us was $3.94 is what it cost. Average sale was $148, which is this usually utility bills, but we have municipal court, we have engineering, we have fire. Then in '23, we had almost a 6.5 million in sales on credit cards. So people are using these more, and we had 45,000 transactions. And each of that sale cost us $5.50. So they're going up. And then in '24, when it really started bugging us and we started looking at this, we had 6.8 million in sales and 46,000 transactions, and the cost was $9 per transaction. That's how much they
Have
raised.
Changed,
We got it back down to 501.
but same carrier or different?
Same carrier, because it was going to cost us more to leave right now, but we're looking. We also would like to change maybe from Tyler Processing and charging that $1 to each person, someone who does it for free to get our business. There are some out there. We're going to be looking at that too. Plus, we could also, I know like the county charges 2.5% as a processing fee. So we could do that to help offset some of that. But that's something you might be thinking about. But we've got it back down.
But like for utilities, if you sign up for ACH or whatever, you can avoid that.
It's free for both of us, yeah. But I just wanted to, I know we talked about that, so I wanted you to know all the work she's gone in there. She bullied them down. Dang it.
That's great.
Good.
Do we have much of a problem with ACHs where we try to debit someone's account and there isn't sufficient money to?
Every once in a while, but not
but
that
not-
often.
That's not a big happening.
After, I think they do it a couple times, they're out of the system. We don't,
Yeah.
Can
Mess
they
with it.
do ACH point in time and not just through auto enroll?
not through us.
But we can look into it as we're looking at new
Yes.
processors and capabilities.
Yes, there's also check presentment. You can do checks and have it, like on the phone, you use your check to call in. We can use your check numbers. It doesn't cost.
Okay.
But we're looking
You
at
can't
that
use
as
a
well.
check.
Yeah.
I think I use a check. Okay.
So we're looking at all the different options. Okay, continue on. What we need from you is a consensus to exceed the revenue neutral rate, so we can have that form and have you fill it out and vote on it on July 8th. And we also kind of need a head nod on the percentile that you want for the wage salary, or the salary increases. What are you thinking, so I can finish all my numbers for the budget? And then any other additional information you want or need? I know you've asked us for a couple things so far, and we'll get those to you.
Well, for my one voice, I do think it's prudent to exceed the revenue neutral rate of the 4.95, or, to accept the entire amount. And then, I guess to me, the 60 percentile makes sense, as opposed to more than that, because that's already a 500 and whatever that was, 500 and
Increase.
some increase that, yeah.
It's a 500 increase over what we had originally thought 20.
Thought about it, what we would have normally done before
Right.
this, yes.
But because, it makes sense that we have to be as competitive as we can
Oh,
be,
yeah.
but we can't go overboard and then.
Have to take it slow. I mean,
Yeah.
to gradually move into it.
Right.
And on some years when we have a good balance, you might think about doing a 4% COLA or whatever the market looks like, and that will help us get up there a little faster too.
Can we get some paper clips to paper clip these, because we don't have dividers for the. I think we'll each need 4. I don't, I had 1.
I want to make sure that I understand this revenue neutral rate. I mean, as far as, I was looking back at the mill levy history. And so the revenue neutral rate lands at 68.82, which is just really more, hearing myself clarify this, is really between 22 and 23 mill levy rates. Does that make sense?
It's what, like last year, we levied $12 million in taxes. And using our new valuation, that is the mill that would take just to do that same that we did last year, not take the increase at all.
That's quite a drop.
But yeah, I see what you're saying, but they're not really counting the mill anymore, it's the dollar amount.
Yeah, I know, but when we talk about these things, we do look at mills.
Yes, we do.
As far as, because of the dollar value, I mean, the total dollar value. And I was looking at that 68.82, and I was thinking, well, that's what the equivalent is, but it really goes back to where we may have been in 22 and 23.
But
I
that,
mean, if we didn't accept, does that make sense? And maybe I'm,
no, it's the
If we
same mills.
collected the same revenue, then our mills would be what they were back then, is what
back
she's
then,
saying.
yeah,
But the mill was worth a lot less back then.
yeah,
So it would be way down.
yeah, yes.
Those dollars, the 68 back then is not the same as the 68 mills now.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 22, it's 129,000 for a mill, and now, you know, for the 26, it'd be 179. So that's a
Yeah.
big difference.
That is a big difference.
Yep.
Mainly, it's in the general. 3.2 mils.
maybe I didn't see it in here. Did we get the number of how much the taxes would increase on a $100,000 house? If we captured the full 610,
I did not do any of those yet.
$33 per thousand,
33, okay, so that's,
roughly.
Thank you.
kind of helps put it in perspective to our citizens. Because they always seem to ask that question.
That sheet, if you can get that sheet for us that we do every year, that would be good. I think you've got 3 scenarios on it.
I've got 100, 200, 300, 400. Yeah. So Rebecca brought up something too. If your house does not increase, your taxes would stay the same because our mill levy is staying the same.
If your
If your valuation
evaluation.
didn't go up.
Well, that didn't happen.
Well, yeah.
So it depends on how much your valuation goes up is how much your taxes might go up.
Mine went up the full 4.9.
9.5,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's about what mine did.
yeah,
so there goes your insurance.
oh, sure.
In the past, I'm looking at the CIP stuff, and if we do a fire station, some communities have a fire EMS or PD type of half a cent or 1 cent sales tax or whatever. Have we looked at that?
I looked at that last year. I did a whole thing on it, but I didn't think you guys were interested in it, so I didn't bring it up.
Well, that one, the thing that's, and that's in out years, I mean, that would be like 2030 or something. And have to go before the community to get approved and everything.
Right.
But that's one way to get everybody that uses those resources to help fund it rather than just
Exactly.
tax paying.
I could show you what I came up with, because it's interesting. It still would need a little bit of a mill levy, but it would bring it quite a ways down.
Right, I mean,
I did ask the state how much we would bring in each year, just the city portion. And so I have that information.
The study would also include
to
options,
fund
how to fund it.
that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know every time we talk about that sales tax thing, whether it's a half cent or a cent or whatever it is, there's always people who say, yeah, but we already have one of the highest sales tax in the state of Kansas,
Yeah.
And they always go back to that. We are already overtaxed However, we need to look at all the options,
Yeah.
Right.
just to have our eyes open.
And
It'd be-
it spreads the burden over a
certainly
larger
does.
group rather than,
Even visitors will help you pay for that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
everybody.
Well, and it gets back to the nonprofit, you know, what is it, 32% of the entire city, well, county, but city,
Yeah, doesn't
you
pay.
know, doesn't pay any property tax. So, and then how do you make that? That's always been a tough one.
That's a
It has.
burden on homeowners.
It is.
because like everybody indicated, you know, the assessed value goes up, then the property tax goes up, then the insurances go up and.
Rents go up.
Rents go
Yeah,
up.
rents
Yeah.
go up, yeah, everything.
No
And those
simple-
don't go up by the exact amount. Those go up in nice round dollars.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when we have a conversation about passing on just a small portion of all of our utility services on to the nonprofits, well, then they start clamoring, that isn't fair. So where do we, you know, where at some point, I would certainly like to see that conversation, but man, I know it'll be an outcry, for sure.
Somebody asked me why so we used to have an intangibles, like North Newton does, currently, still has. And it expired, I believe I don't know if it went to the voters and they chose to not renew it. I wasn't part of the community at the time, so I don't.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any history on that?
I remember that was an option, but I don't know what happened to it. But
So,
why it's
somebody figure
doesn't
that out
exist
and
anymore, but
get back to me.
I think it's an option to explore,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, if we're gonna look at everything and look at all our options, then we need to include that.
Right. So I think we kind of landed on some direction. Maybe need to clarify it a little bit so that staff has what they need, but I think we have no choice but to exceed R&R.
Yeah. I agree.
Did you want a head nod from all of us on what
I-
percentile that you want us
I need a head
to
nod.
land on?
And, I mean, the 60th is,
I'm 60th.
Me too.
are you at the 60th?
Just I mean, my understanding is that we want to stay closer to that 60%.
Right.
Right.
I mean, my notes to myself to look back later is that at the 60th, and then look for incremental opportunities to gradually get to the 70th down the road.
Yeah.
And we don't see, we're not seeing anywhere where we can get, I mean, through the study, it doesn't seem like there's any kind of a process that we can take to get closer to that sooner than
Well, I mean,
later.
we could jump to it right now, but it's where's the revenue going to
Well,
come
right,
from,
right,
you know, and
right.
that's,
We've got to,
yeah. The study recommended 60. Said, that's what the study said.
Right.
We recommend 60, and, you know, you can look for opportunities to get to 70. So that's kind of, I support the study.
they didn't really offer, the study didn't really offer ways to get there.
That's kind of
Not really.
outside of the study's responsibility of, you know, they tell you the number to get to on each of those pay bands and weight and steps and everything, and, but it's the staff and our finance director to tell us where in our revenues that we can fund it from, or
Okay,
where in our expenses we can capitulate and find. So,
okay.
yeah, but the study itself of how to fund it,
No.
that's not part of the study,
Okay.
right?
Right, right, right. It's according to what's in our pocketbook.
I had many an opportunity, many a dream on a car lot of buying that car and did not had to buy that one.
That's right. Okay.
If this helps any, Melanie, I if I'm misspeaking, I will ask the department heads to please speak over me, but to rest your heart and your mind, department heads, I would love 70%, we'd love 80, 90%, but we understand and we know that 60% is sustainable. What I heard was if we could keep that CPI number, that moving target on a yearly basis, which would be a COLA, if we would keep that more in line with what our neighbors are doing, take that pulse and not just make it a flat 2% or whatever it's been in the past, that would keep us, we wouldn't fall behind as what I believe we have been in the past, what has happened. Well, not terrible, because we are, half of our employees are at 50% or above, but they tended to lean with, let's stay at the 60%, but let's make sure every year that we're keeping in line, so.
But the other part of that study called us out on our creating of positions and titles to retain rather than skills building and such to actually move people into those roles.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
we got to do that better too.
Yep, and we plan on,
Every organization has
Yeah.
that problem.
we will be doing that as part of our succession planning model, yeah.
I think any organization that waits 5 years and then looks back and goes, oh, we've had a little bit of scope creep.
So 2 quick things. I wanted to mention this because I think it's important, and then I'll pass it over to Rebecca to talk about CVB. Rebecca and I attended a city managers conference at Wichita State last month, and one of the topics of conversation was property taxes. I just want to keep this in the back of your head. Local property taxes. I know ideally we receive evaluation, our budget needs are determined, and then we magically divide one number by the other, and voila, that's the number we hopefully are able to levy. But that, I know that's not the case. That's an ideal world. And in the real world, evaluation is determined, and we decide what mill levy might be politically acceptable. We take this, we kind of do this dance like, yes, we should, but let's tighten our belt. Let's take out our pencil and see where we can cut so that we are being prudent taxpayers. Because of that, a lot of cities, at least in Kansas, have fallen behind. And the legislature is looking at what can we do to help cities sustain their operations? Because at one point, you just can't do more with more. And so they talked about revenue neutral rate and how that could be going away. But they talked about a cap on annual individual property valuation changes. They talked about maybe using a rolling average for property valuation. There's lots of options thrown out there, but you will see this front and center next at the next legislative session. So just keep that in the back of your mind. We're not the only ones having to navigate this every single year. I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years, and it's been 18 years of trying to figure it out. So I will pass it on to Rebecca to talk about CVB.
Can I just give you a quick update that the tangible or intangible tax went away in 1982.
None of us
Just
had even
43
thought
years
about
ago.
doing what we're doing now at that time.
Not in the least. I hadn't even had a government's class by then.
I just wanted to bring up a quick item. We don't usually get into the details of departmental budgets after we give our presentations, but if you remember when we went over the CVB budget, there were some additional funds being set aside. I wrote in the presentation to grow a Christmas event, grow a marketing grant, and increase the concert series, and all that's accurate. But there were some additionals in there because we were still working on some ideas. Staff has met early this week, and we plan to utilize a large sum of that to put on a 250th 4th of July party, since it'll be the United States' 250th anniversary next year. Just wanted to give you that clarity. The numbers aren't going to change, but we wanted to look at some options for that event. That'll hopefully be a great driver of people coming to our community, wanting to kind of celebrate a hometown 4th of July. But just putting it out there. If you have any comments or if you want us to focus on something else different than that, please let us know now before we proceed. It's one of those types of items because of purchasing, sales, and commitments. We'll need to be planning on it now.
How about if we just tell North Newton to throw us their budget for the 4th, and they can come join us up at Athletic Park for our own? How's that?
I'll let you take the lead on that, Commissioner Kane.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Donna, on the abated taxes, like it says 2019's 966, 566, does that mean that in 2029, is that like the first year it was abated, so 2029 will get the tax?
It may not be, because they just run each year, and it doesn't say on here what year they were put on.
Okay.
I would just have to go back and look.
I would have to think it's the first year they're put on because they wouldn't have a number until they actually put them on.
Right, but they just go back by each year, and I see like Karsten Holdings, they're there every year, so I'm not for sure how far back they started putting it on. I'd have to go look.
Okay.
I think if we go back and take that 20-year look that Mayor Sinan asked for, we could probably also get kind of
When
a
they're falling
total,
off.
a broader picture for you, if that
Right,
helps.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Piece of information, so we know.
If you look at just the years 2019 to 2024, you know, I mean, that's going to be kind of a fun period of time budgeting for those people that are on the commission at that point in time, which probably won't be me or what.
They will
think.
see an increase in assessed valuation, that is
Yeah.
certain. They're going to certainly
might
see
be
some
here.
big increases in assessed valuation.
Yeah, that's kind of exciting. We'll have to remember that we should give some of that back to the public when that happens, because that's what we said when we sold, you know, doing all this project stuff.
I guess you're tired of hearing it, but I ask it every year. So when we look at our strategic goals, and we, under our sustain exceptional public service, we talk about providing the staff and the resources to enable quality levels of services. I need to know that the community is who, and this is where the comprehensive study comes in. I need community input on what are the quality levels that they want, not what we arbitrarily decide in departments or from this bench and everything. So that when that comes out, for whoever's watching or listening or whatever, participate in those community outreach and surveys and all of that to let us know. Because I still think that there are probably some things, even in my own business, that we do at a gold level that maybe we can do at a silver level, and it's just those little small changes that, you know, small amounts of money invested over long periods of time is how you amass wealth, and it's also how you save a budget, so.
Yeah.
I'm done. Welcome to my TED Talk.
What happened to this intangible tax in 82? Did it expire? Did it, or what? Why did that stop?
They voted on an ordinance to reinstate it, and it died.
So it had a sunset in the original.
It must have. I didn't pull up the
That's the way I
original
remember
ordinance. Yeah,
Intangible tax in the whole state.
yeah.
North Newton, I think, charges 2% of interest and dividends, and I think the
What does
rest
it
of the
bring in?
state's at 2.25.
Right.
Yeah. CPAs love doing intangible tax returns.
And I did pull up the budget timeline in the future, so this is what we're going to be doing the next couple months.
I might point out, if you take all the taxes abated from 2019 to 2024, they'll go back on. If they go back on at the same level that they are right now, at the same what a mill levy will generate, that's 33.51 mills. That's what economic development does for the community. It's a big deal.
So the goal would be to make sure that you don't increase
Could be, yeah.
that amount
Yeah,
by that time that they.
yeah, your expenditures. Yep. You don't want to chew that up. So hopefully the increase in valuation plus stuff that comes, the new stuff that comes on, it'll handle the inflation rate.
With a margin, yeah. Hopefully.
That's how it's supposed to be done.
I do have one question. How do you feel on the 8th with the R&R not to exceed? Do we need to have another work session? Are you
I'm good.
comfortable?
I'm good.
Fine.
Okay, because we can, the next one on the 26th is when we'll set our not to exceed budget. And we can have a work session then, or we can just have some time during the meeting to go over things that you don't like about the budget and stuff like that. Or want to change or add to or whatever. That would be our next option for you guys to really look, to go with what we've got or tell us to do some
26th.
different, the 26th of July.
And Donna, couldn't we could have a little time when they do the, not to, with the notice to exceed the R&R, we could bring back some of the questions perhaps then?
Yeah, we can, some of our answers.
26th of July is a Saturday.
The 26th? Oh, that's when I'm going to put it in the paper.
Oh.
So
that
it's a
would
few
be
days before that.
the 20.
It would be what, the 21st?
22nd,
22nd,
commission meeting,
somewhere-
work
yeah.
session.
Yeah, that'll be the second meeting in July, basically.
Might be good to put that in the back of our minds on our calendars.
Because we have to
Just
get
in
it into
case.
into the paper.
That it?
That's all we have?
Were we going to try and do the
Could we? Maybe
Executive
15
session.
minutes for an executive session?
15?
Do it.
Call
I'd
for
be
that
coming back
motion.
at 6:40 to City Commission chambers.
I move that the city commission recess into executive session to conduct discussions with legal counsel. A justification for closing the meeting is to consult with the city attorney to discuss matters privileged under the attorney-client relationship, and the time and place at which the open meeting shall resume is 6:42 PM.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. One miss. Catch you in the hallway. 6:42, we have returned from our executive session where no action was taken.